benefit of standards-based grading, especially for parents and guardians and students also, is that we give more specific feedback of their students' strengths and areas for improvement. It's more learning target-based, skill-based, instead of just an overall percentage of how they're doing in an area. It gives them what specific learning target or skill they need to work on to reach that proficiency level, rather than just an overall score within an assessment.
Standards reference grading provides the opportunity for parents to see specifically the skills that we're looking at within each standard. So as opposed to just looking at math as a whole and how they're doing in a subject area, we're looking at their progression of mastery through a standard. In that case, parents are able to see what it is that their kiddos are excelling at, but also what it is that they're needing to work on and what they can do to help support at home. So it just gives a little more explicit information for parents. Seeing the kids get so involved in what they're learning. So you could see them really take ownership and pride in the parts that they were doing well in. It really gave that opportunity of not saying, here's what you're missing or here's what you got wrong on this test. It was really showing them like, here's what you know, here's what you're doing well, and here's what you can expect to see next, or here's what this one piece we're going to work on next, instead of a big chunk.
I think that the benefit of standard reference grading is really digging into what their students are learning versus it just being a letter grade that shows that they're doing well. They both have benefits, but the standard reference piece of it really gives an idea of what might be missing or areas that they're even excelling in, depending on the score that they receive in terms of the proficiency scale. And so it's a more in-depth look for parents, even if they don't have an understanding of what that means, but it opens up questions for them to be able to ask more specific things of how to help their child.
I just feel like I can see the progression of their learning throughout the school year. It gives me a good snapshot from the beginning to the end, and I can see the growth and maybe some dips, and then I can dive into more if there are some dips of the reasons why.
Kids being able to set specific goals and targets within their standards, and understanding their standards and where their expectations are and where they need to go, using those proficiency scales. Students really understand what the expectation is at the end of the learning, and so that they can work for those small learning targets along the way and get those successes and celebrations along the way.
It was definitely a shift, a mindset shift, a change, but a positive one. It took a little bit of restructuring the way we were thinking about grading. So as opposed to giving, an assessment on two different standards, but just saying, it was an 80% on this assessment, we were better able to look at what skills were they performing on that test and how were they doing on each specific skill. That way we were able to do reteaching in those specific areas.
Change is hard, and it's a shift. There's going to be a shift for teachers and students in addition to the parents.
I felt like the communication with myself with my parents, it went really well. There were some questions at first of what does it mean and how does it correlate with an A and B, but once we got past that, I think it just was more of an easy transition for knowing what they are coming home with and understanding like, hey, this is a 4, and wow, my student actually can teach me now. That's how I taught my students. If you can teach it, it's a 4. And so it was more of a solid foundation, and the report card was just easier to read. They said that multiple times, that it was just an easier thing to understand, and that it was more clear cut. One thing that I think is really incredible on our side point is that it follows up. So kindergarten, you would see the A's and B's before, but now you can see each standard and the progression that they have throughout their whole career, and it's not just a snapshot of that year of if they turned in the work. So I think that's going to be a really incredible thing that they can have throughout their whole education career. And then I just think it's, like I said, it's easier to see the progression. So if you see a 2 at the beginning of the year and you see that 4 at the end of the year, you can see that growth. Because if they would have had an A at the beginning and an A at the end, what did they truly get out of it? Where with the point system, you can really see that growth that they have throughout the whole school year.
They'll be able to see specific standards and where their kiddo's at. So there's a scale 1 through 4. 1 would just show that the kids are able to do certain things with some assistance. A 2 would show that they've mastered some of those skills and they're on their way to mastering the entire standard. And then a 3 would show that they've mastered that standard and it's an end of the year standard. And then a 4 would just show that they were able to master that standard and some components of a little bit of a higher level. It's really just there to show you where they're needing support and where they've already, reached that mastery level. I think that one of the big misconceptions was that, if they weren't receiving a 3, that they weren't where they needed to be. But those standards are end of the year goals. So a 3 is what you would expect to see at the end of the grade level. If you see it prior to that, that's wonderful, but a 1 at the beginning of the year and a 2 as you're progressing are really awesome scores to see. It's just showing you where they're at and where you're looking to be.
I think it's a great way to find those celebrations for their kids and know, you can be very specific in where they're at. Most parents are always asking, where can I help? Where do they need that help? And you can give that specific information to them so they know what they can be helping their kid with and where to have those celebrations as well.
It truly is more of what your student knows. It's no longer of how your student was able to do the assignment, completed it first, or it was nice and neat, or they behaved well during it. That's gone. So it's truly if they understand the content. And that's a huge thing for students to understand, that it's not about your behavior. That's a behavior academic, that's scored differently. This is truly just if you know what you are learning and how well you're doing it.
That it's different, but it's different in the most positive way. It's going to give you more information on your child's education. It's going to tell you what you can do to help them at home in a more explicit manner, and it's also going to show you those celebrations, those little wins along the way. And that not only builds up the student, but it also is able to show the parents their wins as well.